Alright, what this is I have a new thing going on the stream here where people that subscribe to the stream can opt in, if they choose, to have a game reviewed, which I'll review it on stream. I will critique, analyze it, whatever, and then I'll upload it to YouTube. And so that way, if the person that subscribed isn't around when I do it, they can watch it on YouTube later. So if you're a subscriber, then you can come to the stream, give me a VOD, a YouTube video, unlisted or whatever, of the game that you played, and I will analyze it and tell you how you can improve based on it. So this is Princess Rimu's game, playing Torvald on Frog Isle, and he asked me to analyze it, so I'm going to do that. Now with these games, I'm probably not going to do the full game. Like, it would take a long time to do the full game. Probably what I would do is I do like the first point and then first attack or defense, and then I might skip a bit later to the late game so that I can show some variance between early game and late game. But the most, for the most part, I'm just going to be doing either like half the game or certain point fights or whatever. It just depends a bit on what you're playing, what map it is, stuff like that. Because obviously, going through the whole game, it's going to be a lot of like reiteration of the same things. If you do one mistake at the start, and I point that out, chances are you're going to do the same mistake later on. So instead, I'm just going to do a little bit of the game, and then hopefully you can take the critique and improve on the aspects. It's going to be very general. It's not going to be super specific. I might point out some specifics here and there, but generally speaking, it's going to be a bit more general. So I don't want to have to reiterate over and over again the same thing, because that's not going to be very helpful for anybody. So yeah, this is Princess Rimu submitted this game. Unfortunately, there's no sound in the game. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but there's no sound in the game, so we're gonna have to go without that. But regardless, it should be perfectly fine. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip forward a bit to the actual point fight. Alright, first of all, comment number 1 is a very important part. If you're playing Paladins and you want to play Paladins at a more competitive level, you need to play with 120 FOV. Like, you have to have a 120 FOV. There are some small cases, very few cases, where it's okay to have less than that. If you're playing very specific champions, so like Androxus, Victor, like tracking related champions, then you can get away with having like 110, but I definitely wouldn't go below 110. And then if you're playing anything other than like those few champions where the FOV is can potentially increase your aim, then you need to be playing at 120, especially if you're playing tanks or supports. It's super important. Always play at 120 FOV, especially when you're playing tanks and supports where the aiming is not as relevant. So yeah, that's comment number 1. Alright, so your general plan here, by the way, this is for Torvald. Your general plan here is you want to be, especially on Frog Isle, you want to be around the point. You want to be in a position where you're not really being frontline, but you're not all the way in the back either. You want to be in the middle of things, kind of disrupting it, but you don't want to be that aggressive frontliner. We talked a little bit about it in the sub roles video, where you don't really want to you don't want to push up too aggressively. Instead, you kind of want to be in the midst of things and looking for people to shield over and over again, or looking for either a pocket shield or just general shielding. And a disruption, so when the other team's barrack puts out a shield, you can absorb it, so you're always kind of in the middle of the fight. It's very heavily position oriented. It's not about mechanics, it's not about anything like that, it's just positioning and knowing who to shield. Those are the two main things at Torvald. So first of all, going right here, perfectly fine. Just get on the point, that's fine. You're just causing disruption right now. Chances are you should probably be looking around a bit, making sure that you have your teammates here. Like, you can see all of them are here. Like, all 5 players are right here. So standing here on the point, like, once you see them there, standing on the point's a bit risky. You're probably better off like getting on the point, seeing the fact that everybody's here, and then coming down around the corner, standing behind a pillar, being a bit more safe. Because if you just stand here, you're gonna get blown up. You can already see you lost like a third of your health pool. So you have to be, when you're going for the point like this, you have to be aware of where the rest of the team is. in a higher level competitive game, chances are you're not going to have everyone in this area. Instead, you'll probably have some people going down here to the left, or you have people chilling here, but there's no, like, usually you're not going to see people all the way up here. You might see 1 or 2 people at most. Again, like, staying by the point here, it's fine, but you probably want to get to safety a bit earlier. You want to try to not lose all your shield if possible, but you're pretty much fine because they do have a Fernando, which is really good for you. Like, the fact that they have a Fernando is kind of saving your ass right now. But yeah, your team's kind of snowballing this. I'd say you're probably better off pushing a bit harder. Like, once you get the opening kill, you can push a bit harder. Like, you don't have to be around the point as much anymore, but I mean, it's taking forever for your team to kill this Fernando. Your team seems to be a bit lemming, so. Alright, at this point, you have full point control at this point. So what you should be doing is that the Buck should be pushing up, right? The Buck should be up in their spawn practically by now. So with the Buck up in the spawn, you should be following up on him. Like, you should just be running around with this Buck. Like, this Buck, like, you can see now, he's going to leave to their spawn. You killed the last person. He's going to be going to their spawn, dismounting, or at least up here on the corner. And you should probably be here with him. Like, you standing here is a really solid spot for you to continuously shield the Buck. So once you start getting the snowball, once you get 1 or 2 kills, then you can start moving away from the point and making sure that you're shielding the Buck over and over again. If you don't have a Buck, then whoever your flanker is or whoever your damage carry is, that could be a Cassie, a Androxus, even an Eevee, or sometimes if you don't have a flank at all, you could shield the Shaolin over and over again. Either way, you should move away from the point, let the healer cap for the most part, and push up with the Buck or the carry. So again, there's no, like you can see here, there's 2 people capping. There's no reason for you to stand on point right now. Even if you want to stay around the point, you shouldn't be on the point itself. You should get either high ground up here so you have more line of sight for the shields, or you should get down a bit lower so you can dismount anyone that's coming from the left side. Whatever it is, you just shouldn't be on point with the snake. Like, when you have so much control as you do right now, there's no reason at all for you to be on the point. Probably shouldn't be shooting the Fernando shield either. Like, it's fine if you have your right click to take down the Fernando shield and if you're in a position to take down the shield, but like, you shouldn't be chasing around a Fernando. Like, and then there, like, this is kind of the issue with having low FOV, is that there is a Cassie right here, and if you had higher FOV, you could see exactly where she goes. You could see if you have the ability to chase her. But having the low FOV, like, you're limited to this little box here, and this is the only thing you can see really. So what you should have done instead is that you should have chased this Cassie away. Like, the Ruckus, like, your team should be able to kill the Ruckus. He has no mobility. You're not really doing a lot of damage to him anyways. If he pops his shield, you can turn around and absorb it. But generally speaking, you're going to be chasing the Cassie. Like, when they're around the point, you want to chase the carries away or the healer away. So if there's 1, 2, or if there's 2 or more people on the point, find your priority target, which is never going to be the tank unless you have your shield, or unless you have your right click up, and instead try to chase around the carries. At the very least, you can disrupt the carries. Because right now, in this scenario here, the Cassie's going to have free roam down here now. She rolled out. There's no one, like, if you're not focusing her, you can't really rely on your team to focus her. So she could easily just be rolling around here and come all the way around and just be a complete disruption to your team. So it's important that you make sure you disrupt the carries before they can get away, heal up, and cause chaos. This is good though. This is good. Waiting. I mean, your team's a bit special since they're kind of up here doing other stuff instead of killing this Ruckus. Like, you would, if you just kill this Ruckus, you basically have the cap. Like, there's still 3 people respawning, and the Androxus isn't going to be able to hold the point alone. So your team should probably just kill this Ruckus fast so you can get the cap before the respawns come in. But this was good by you, going around the pillar. Like, you're reloading anyways, you're go around the pillar. You can let the Ruckus stand on point. You don't have to be on the point with the Ruckus. If you're getting low, then it's more important that you focus on staying alive than trying to deal with the Ruckus. So you could just honestly, even now, you could probably just go around the pillar, like, make sure the Ruckus isn't getting any ult charge. Like, he's not really getting any value if he's just standing there on point. So I would say it was a good decision to just go around the pillar and chill for a bit. You probably should have kept doing it for a little while. Like, just give him 0 value, let him stand on point. Like, there's no pressure. He's not going to cap 50% alone anyways. So you can let him stand there for a second. And that goes for any situation with any role against any tank. If they're standing on point in desperation for overtime, then you don't have to stand on point. In a scenario like this, there's no reason for you to be on the point. It's much better if you spread out, and it doesn't matter what you're playing. It's much better that you spread out and then get an angle. So if you're playing a Torvald, then what Rimu just did, go around a pillar, just let him stand on point for a bit while you regen. If you're playing a Drogos, then you can just get up on the high ground. Like, there's no reason to actually be on the point when there's no pressure on it. That's something a lot of people miss out on. Alright, a little bit greedy there. Probably should have, that's what I was saying, is that you should probably just chill a bit. Like, go around the pillar, like, let the Ruckus be there. Like, he's not doing anything anyways. So just let him be there. There's no real reason for you to die there. And see, the fact that you did die here, like the fact that you were a bit greedy for the Ruckus and didn't just stay behind cover, just basically allows them for a second chance at this. Obviously the Ruckus did die eventually, but just generally speaking, like you essentially let them come back in. Like, the Ying and Cassie are now in position because you didn't just wait patiently. If everyone was just patient, you had your angles, you had a Buck up here, you had a Victor here, and then if you were behind the pillars down here, then you had all the angles. They would have to go to point. If whoever's spawning in has to go to point. Like, you can see this Cassie's on point, this Ying is coming towards point. No matter what they do, they're gonna have to touch it. And when they do touch it, then you basically have free kills because they're just playing the desperation game at that point. The fall on this seems to be like 80 or 90. So yeah, again, it's like there's no real reason to fight the Ruckus here. Like, obviously he pops his ult, but again, they're still making the desperation play. You don't have to really do anything here. It's more important for you to just stay alive and keep shielding. Like, if you can shield the Victor or the Buck and give them damage, then that's way better than you trying to actually do damage. You just like stand around a pillar. Like, you could easily just stand behind one of these pillars. Hold your right click for when they pop shield, or just stand here and try to shield your Buck or your Victor so they get more damage on the tanks. You're way better off that way because you're not really going to do enough damage to kill anyone anyway. You're just relying on your team to do damage. So unless you have like a cauterized 3 and you want to keep them cauterized, then there's not much point in you actually standing on point. Like, unless you're trying to make unless you're trying to get an overtime proc, then there's no reason for you to do it. It's much better if you just stand in from safe distance, keep shielding, and use your going quickly for your right click when they pop their shields, and then leave again. Overall, it was perfectly fine though. Like, it's not really anything on your end here. Like, there's nothing you did particularly wrong. It's just like the only real thing is you don't need to be on point as much as you are. Like, playing a Torvald, especially where you're so supportive rather than a straight up frontliner, then there's no real reason for you to be standing on point as much as you are. Obviously it's not a great scenario because you are the solo tank, and solo tank Torvald is because you're relying on your team killing them basically, because you're not expected to be able to fight their tanks. If their tanks have a healer, you're not expected to fight them on point. You're expected to just support your carry so that they can fight them. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing here as it is on point. Like, you're doing a better job here than you were on point with the zoning. Like, once you get a kill, then you can push up pretty far. You don't have to be anywhere near the payload, especially with how little range you have. It's much better off if you come around a rock, or you can go up here on the left side. And if you're in this area, then anyone that comes and fights you, you should be able to outtrade. Generally speaking, this area is a little bit better just because he gets better value from his ult. Like, if you do get ult here, you can pop it quick and get a Fernando off the map or whatever. But generally speaking, just staying behind a rock, whether it's here or up here, or even by the tree over there, then that's kind of your plan. You don't want to be by the cart. You want to be close enough to the cart where you can help it, but you don't want to be on the cart. It's much better if you just push up a little bit and make sure you're getting shield value on your Buck that eventually is going to jump in. And like, the Buck should be jumping in here, going on the respawn Cassie, or he's going to be going up here on the Andro, or if the Ying's in the back, the Ying should probably be around here somewhere. Maybe if you haven't pushed very far, maybe she'll be here. But that's kind of where you want to pressure. You want to be in a position where you can shield your Buck or your Victor. So this is a good area. Buck jumps in, you shield him, or if Buck doesn't jump in, you can always shield backwards and shield the Victor instead. That's a lot of drawings, Jesus. But yes, this is much better than on the point fight for sure. Obviously here, this is a bit different scenario. You kind of got pushed back a bit. I'm not sure why you got pushed back, because you had your team. Your team was already in position, and you had to kill the Cassie, so you shouldn't really be being pushed back here. It's not really your fault. I imagine it's probably just your team taking too much damage and not healing it up properly. But yeah, this is, well, that's a we'll call that a little bit of an NA ult. It was a okay decision, I guess. You can ult the Ruckus away from the point, but that's not really going to do much for you. Like, it's much better to save that for a situation where you can knock him further away, because the way you knocked him now, like, him being over here doesn't really make a difference. He's just going to double dash back to the cart, and he's perfectly fine. He's on the cart, and you just use your ult instead. Instead, what you should have done is probably just right-clicked. Like, you right-click, take a shield if he had a shield proc, and move around on the right side, and instead try to ult him this way, off the map. At least that way, like, there's a chance he goes off the map. If he doesn't go off the map, then it's the same situation as the other one anyways, where he's just double dashing back to the point. So that's, you're way better off. You're way better off trying to get a better position before holding your ult. I imagine that was mostly just a safety ult of, I didn't want to die to a Ruckus ult or something. So that's it's fine. It happens. Everyone has NA ults, but generally speaking, you want to try to position yourself in a way where you can get them far enough away from the cart where they can't get back quickly, or get them off the map. But yeah, you have control here again. Like, there's no, like, you should probably be pushing up a bit here. Just kind of follow your Buck around. Like, you could easily just push up with the Buck there. There's no real reason not to. Well, that feels bad. Feels Cassie, man. But yeah, you definitely want to use, you definitely want to push a bit harder with the Buck. You're going the right direction, and also, like, having that area where you're going is pretty solid, so. But yeah, your team's still sort of snowballing. Only you died, and they have 2 down. So again, you can push up here, like, push up with the Buck, or find a buddy basically, and push with your buddy. So now you can see, like, your whole team's down here to the right. So what you can do, this is a perfectly fine area, or you can come around behind the rock, push the Fernando that was pushing your teammates, and then when the Buck eventually, like, when the Buck's fighting the Fernando, you can give him shields, or the Victor, and then eventually once you kill the Fernando or force him out, then the Buck's going to jump in and you can shield him. So you want to try to position yourself with your carries a bit. Obviously, if your carries are stacked, then there's really not that much you can do. Like, you want to have a position where you're not stacking up with your teammates, especially if you're playing something like a Fernando with Scorch or Drogos. But if you're not playing against that, then it's better off that you're with your teammates and rely on your teammates not stacking. Like, if you have a Victor, Buck, and Snake here, then you're still better off stacking with them. It's up to them to not stack up. So, because you're the one that needs close range. You're the one that can't really decide on your positioning too much. A Victor, for instance, can decide to position himself wherever he wants. He has the range, so he doesn't have to be up close or anything. So you're way better off just positioning yourself, like, focus on your personal positioning, what's best for you, and then figure out, like, are we stacked up? Like, do I need to leave here so that we're not stacked up? You should probably be looking for shields a bit more. Like, there's no real reason for you to be pushing these guys. It's way better if you rely on your teammates to push these guys. If the Buck jumps in from behind, or if the Victor's spraying them down, then at the end of the day, you're getting more damage by just shielding your teammate than you are just walking up here. Plus, you're also not taking the damage. The only time you want to be, like, going in like this is if you have another tank, and then even then, it's mostly the other tank that's going to be pushing anyways. So I'd say don't try to push this, but instead let your teammates, your secondary tank or your Buck or your Bruiser, Grok, whoever it is, they should be the ones pushing up here and forcing them back, and you should just be shielding them over and over again. See, this is more of a position you want. Here, your goal is essentially to be able to see as many people as possible. You want to see as everybody so you can shield when you need to. Like, the Maeve now is getting low. You're in a position where you can shield her. You're still helping in that you can silence this Fernando to stop doing damage. You can shield the Maeve. you can still do damage to the Fernando, so you're being useful here, but at the same time you're in a position where you can essentially see everybody. If you look to the right, you can see 2 players. If you look to the left, you can see 2 players. So this is a pretty good position for you, at least in this fight. So that's this is a much better like idea for you, especially when you're playing with. Is it actually a Mave, by the way? Yeah, it is a Mave. Okay, thought I was blind for a second. But yeah, it's a much better position there if you can see everybody. At this point, this is a lost fight. Like, you have 2 people down. Like, you got a 2 for 2, which is an okay trade, but since you're so close to their spawn, your teammates are never going to be able to get back in time before their teammates respawn. So while you're fighting a 3v3 right now, then it's going to be a 5v3 very soon, so. At this point, you probably just want to be resetting. You're just kind of delaying your own death right now. It's better if you can try to run out, because if you can't escape, then you're okay. Obviously, it was close enough to the end of the round where it didn't really make a difference anyways. But if that was a bit earlier in the round, then you would have been better off backing off, trying to get a better position, and then re-entering instead of trying to just stand there and take all the damage. I don't know about getting the Master Riding. Having Master Riding 1 is pretty solid on Torvald, because you can get in. You can get in pretty quick and start causing disruption, and you can also dismount some people. An early silence or taking a Makoa hook early on can be pretty good. So I'd say, like, you're fine getting Master Riding 1, but besides that, you know that they have a Ying, you probably should have gotten a Cauterize 2. You could have afforded a Cauterize 2. So I'd say Cauterize was a better option, and then once you have Cauterize 2, you can either wait for a Master Riding 2 or a Cauterize 3, or you could potentially get a Haven or something. I wouldn't say getting Master Riding 3 is particularly good value, especially on Frog Isle, with it being such a small map. If anything, I'd say get Nimble early and get a higher level of Nimble on Frog Isle. On other maps, Master Riding definitely has decent value though. Skip forward a bit to the point fight again. Yeah, same thing here. You want to get in position. Up here is a perfectly fine position, or going down the trees is also fine. But you want to sit back a bit. You know that last time they went all 5 up here, so you probably know that going to point's not your best idea, and instead it's better if you just stand here on the corner and try to shield people down by the point. Like, you don't have to go to the point straight away. There's no real need to do that. Like, letting them get a few points is perfectly fine. It's much better if you all get positions around them, and if you can wrap around them all the way, then you're in a much better position than trying to just go on point and then they're all shooting at you. Optimally, like, no matter what you're playing, it's way better if you can force them to shoot at you, or force them to go into point so you can get angles on them. Like, if they're all going to point, or if they're all in this area, then you can wrap around them. Whereas if you're going to point, then they can wrap around you easily. So I'd say you're better off standing up here, trying to shield people that are fighting that, because your team's probably going to be here. There might be one behind you, and you want to get a good position here. You could potentially get a sneaky ult off if you're standing here, but whatever it is, you don't really want to go to point here. That's a decent ult. I don't know if is he gonna survive that? No, he didn't. So that's a good ult. That's kind of what you wanted. I mean, obviously, like, you went straight to point, which, I mean, if the Ruckus is a good player, he'll know that you have ult. He'll know that he shouldn't be in that position, and it's way easier if you're up on this high ground on this ledge up here. Then it's way easier to get that ult off. Like, the Ruckus shouldn't have been there in the first place, right? The Ruckus should have positioned himself along this wall, so you can't really get a solid ult off. But that's not really something that you can do about it. You had an ult opportunity and you took it. So yeah, at this point you're already snowballing the fight. You should be right-clicking the shield, try to get it down. Even if you're full HP, you should still be right-clicking the shield just to try to get it down as fast as possible. Your team's kind of doing a little bit of whatever, I guess. No one's really... I mean, this is perfectly fine, really. Like, leaving the Fernando to last is what you're expected to do. You're expected to kill everybody else, and your team does pretty much kill everybody else, and then you deal with the Fernando. Again though, like, you don't all have to be here dealing with this Fernando. Obviously, this is not as much on your end as it is your carries. But like, you had a Victor and a Buck both right here shooting this Fernando. Like, the Buck should already be like in their spawn, dismounting everybody that's respawning. There's no reason for him to be there at all. Oops. So this isn't really your bad, but generally speaking, this goes for anybody that's watching this, is that if there's a Fernando or a Ruckus or any tank or anybody at all really left on the point, you don't all have to be standing there shooting. It's way, but like, it only takes, like, if it's a 2v1, then let it be a 2v1. If it's a 3v1, that's fine too. But just don't put everybody focusing the same guy. Because it's like, all you're doing right now is wasting your time. Everybody's staring at this Fernando ult. Whether it's a Fernando ult or an EV ice block or just a Ruckus standing on point, you're just wasting time staring at him when you could be dismounting them so you have more cap potential. You can be getting angles. There could be someone up here, someone on the left side down there, and then Torvald could be up here shielding both of those two. So like, you don't have to have a bunch of people staring at this Fernando. It's just unnecessary. Obviously though, that's not your fault. You're probably the best option to stand here and deal with this Fernando. You're the one that can get down the shield quick. So it's not on your end, but just generally for anybody that's watching, you don't have to be standing here and just watching the Fernando ult. So again, you're pretty much fine here. You should probably be looking around a bit more. Like, you're fine kind of out, you're fine boxing this Ruckus. Like, you're keeping him away from the point, and that's perfectly fine. But you should probably be looking around a bit more. You're not active enough with your shields. Your main goal in the game is to be shielding as many people as possible. The more shields you can get off, the better. So even if you're in a good position to box someone, you should still be looking around every now and then to see if there's anyone that you need to shield, or that you can shield. Again, like, you're not really using your shield. The main reason you're picking Torvald in the first place is to get the shields off, so you should probably be using this on cooldown every single time. Like, you could be shielding this buck, you could even shield the snake just so that he gets out safely, but it's really important that you're just shielding as many people as possible. If you're playing against a Makoa, that's the only time I would say you should save it, because then you might want to save it for the hook, but generally speaking, it's just like always just keep spamming the shield as many people as possible. Like, even if it, like in that scenario right there, when the Ruckus is pushing away, even in this scenario, like, you don't need a lot of damage to finish this guy off. You shooting this guy isn't going to make that big of a difference anyways, so what you should do instead is, instead of locking onto him, you just turn around, shield whoever else is doing damage to him, and then turn back around and keep shooting him. Because that only takes like a split second. You can just spam Q, and you're gaining a lot of DPS essentially. Like, you personally are not getting DPS for that, but giving a shield to someone else is increasing your team's DPS on the Ruckus. That was a better shield though, at least you used it on the snake. Keep him alive. He was a bit low, so I'm sure he's happy for that shield. Again though, like, you don't really need to be on point here. Like, it would be better if you were down here helping the buck. That's probably a better option for you. You don't need to be shooting the Fernando anyways. So come down here, help the buck, or in this case the Andrew just uses dash up here, so you could just leave the Fernando, like right click the Fernando, take a shield, and while you're doing that you run towards the Androxus so you can try to deal with him. Like, again, you're better off trying to deal with the carries, keep them away, than just dealing with the Fernando point. You don't have that much damage from the Fernando anyways. Alright, so now you capped, again, just like last time. Now it's your role to just push up as hard as possible. Like, they shouldn't, if anything, they're just going to have a DPS or a desperation play here where the Ruckus might come dashing on the point, but that's not really your issue. Like, that should be fine regardless of whether or not you're on the point. So the snake should be capping right now. You should be pushed up, like with the buck immediately. Like, once you start capping, you should be pushed up halfway to their spawn and shield the bucks and get in a position where you can shield the buck so that he can get some stagger off if possible. And here's the desperation play. You should probably be shielding the Victor or the Snake here so they get more DPS. But like, again, this is just desperation play. Like, well, okay, it's worth mentioning. You see that you didn't use your shield at all, and the Snake died for that. Now is when it starts becoming an issue. Now it's like, okay, well, sure, it was a desperation play, and he was just doing it to YOLO win, try to get some more overtime proc. But it starts to become an issue if people are dying. And this is obviously the Snake's job to make sure he's not dying. He could easily have just gone around a pillar and stayed safe. Like, there's no reason for him to stand on point. But it's also your job. You need to make sure that he's shielded. Like, you silence the Ruckus, shield the Snake, do everything to keep them alive. Basically, if they're making mistakes, then unfortunately you need to compensate for it. So you probably should have shielded him, you probably should have silenced the ruckus, instead of just standing there and trying to DPS him. At the end of the day, you still got the cap though. It didn't really make a difference, but in higher end games, then it's important for sure that you make sure that you're keeping them alive, because that could be a very costly mistake if that snake dies there. Again, not really your fault, but you kind of need to compensate for his mistakes. I like this though. I like this standing on the point. This is how I play Torvald as well. Stand on the cart, and BM them. You should probably be backing up here. You got the right idea here. Back up. Like, there's no reason for you to be in the front line like that. Obviously, your team is snowballing. Like, your team, you got the pick already. So you should be snowballing this. So you can be more aggressive, but it's more on your team to be more aggressive. Like, your Buck is the one that needs to jump in. Your Victor is the one that needs to get damaged. You also have a Mave who can get in the back line. This is what it should be, basically. The Buck and the Mave jump in. You should be going with them, and you should be shielding when they do jump in. Like, it's on them to basically to go in, and then you follow up on them with the shields. You can silence the Fernando, do whatever you want basically, but you should be following up on the Buck and the Mave. Make sure you're shielding them consistently as well. Like, the Mave could definitely use a shield. Obviously it's on cooldown right now, but just generally speaking, like, this is the scenario where you want the shields, where Mave is one shot and trying to pressure them. This is a clutch shield. This is a shield that will allow you to snowball if you can shield this Mave here. So basically what that was is them going in, doing what they're supposed to, and then them fucking up in that they underestimated how much damage these guys got. There was too many people here. They didn't have proper angles. They both kind of just lemminged in. Like, Mave could have easily gone this way, Buck could have gone behind and been harassing this Androxus instead of just jumping on a ruckus, because both Mave and Buck, if they jump on a ruckus, they're gonna die. Like, no matter what, they're gonna die. This should be reset time. Like, you just had 2 people go down. You should not be fighting that. There you go. That's the right decision. The greediest Victor ult I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, you're making the right decision here. You don't really want to be fighting this. Like, you should just be chilling. No reason to be harassing this. Like, all of the damage you're going to get off here on the Fernando and Ruckus is just going to be healed up by the Ying anyways. So, like, you should have been out of there. You should have been, like, behind this wall or back here already. There's no reason for you to be that deep. Again, this is just resetville. You're waiting for your Buck and Mave to do something, basically. Same thing as I said before. Like, you're in a perfectly fine position here now. You're healthy. You should just be harassing whoever comes at you, waiting for your Buck. Like, there's an Androxus out of position, right? Your Buck and your Mave should already be on this guy. Your job now, you keep the Fernando busy, you silence him, or the Ruckus, whoever's standing here, and then you just shield whoever's going on this Androxus. That's what you should be looking for. You know that this Androxus is out of position now. You can see him here on the left, and you should know that, okay, well, maybe not in a game like this, but in a higher end game, you should know, okay, well, I'm probably going to have someone go and try to fight that Androxus. I should be ready to shield whoever's going on that Androxus. There you go, now the Angel's fighting. There's the shield, hopefully. Yeah, there you go. You probably could have kept your position there. There's no real reason to drop down. Like, now you're in a position where you have no escape. Like, you can't go this way because there's a Ruckus here that's going to shoot you. You can't go this way because then you're just going into their team alone. And the only way to get out is if you go back this way, which is such a long way all the way around. So you probably shouldn't have dropped down. You could have stayed up top. There's no real reason. Like, you have the range anyways. You have the range shield. Like, standing up here is perfectly fine. You can shield anybody on the map basically anyways. So no real reason to drop down here. Right, you should be dying here, and honestly, like, you see, now you can kind of see, like, now, alright, you're in this position, where do you go? Your only option is to run this way, and you're dead anyways if you run this way, as I'm sure you'll be dying here, unless you get pocket healed by Snake, or they don't push you. No, they don't push you, because, they're a bit special. I'm not sure exactly where your Snake's going. Yes, he wanted to get up close and cuddly with this Buck, but this is just not not a fantastic position for you. You have a Ruckus up here that can shoot any of you. You have a Ying that can easily just stand on this railing here and shoot down at you. She can pop illusions down here anyways. You're just kind of cornering yourself by all going down here. It's not really your fault, it's mostly on the snake for coming in here with the buck. The buck's in a fine position, he can just jump up here. So it's kind of just the snake that's fucking up a bit here. So now what you should be doing here is you should probably be backing off a little bit. Like, this position is honestly perfectly fine. The Ruckus can't shoot you, there's a pillar in the way. You're able to still shield everybody, you can silence the Cassie. So this position is okay for you. But if I were you, I'd probably go, okay, those guys are dead. Like, they just fucked themselves, and I'd be bailing. Like, I'd be bailing, trying to stay alive, trying to stay as healthy as possible, and try to get an overtime proc on the card, if anything. But at this point, you probably lost this push anyways. And that's an NA ult. Get the idea behind it. It's, alright, my team has cornered themselves now. I should probably try to save them if I can. But that's an NA ult. And that at this point, this point's already lost. Like, the best you can do here is get a kill and then try your best to snowball, but you're never gonna do it. They're gonna know that you're in overtime and you're playing desperation for the point. There's nothing you can really do at this point. This one's already lost. Like, you may as well just die here because you're not gonna be getting anything here. Although it seems like these guys have no idea how to actually kill a target. But once you die, then your team's gonna have to make desperation play. They go to point, they die. Pretty much expected there. So yeah, I think from now on it's probably just gonna be reiteration of the same thing. I think you get the point probably. It's a lot of holding better position. Like, you don't have to be on point. Even if you're playing solo tank, you don't have to play on point. It's way better if you play in a position that you can contribute to your whole team, right? Sure, it's nice and all if you can force the tanks off point or force the carries off point, if you can silence people, if you're in range to do damage, but it's probably better if you're staying up on the high ground, stay on the ledge where you're not taking as much damage and just shielding your team, because at the end of the day, most of Torvald's damage comes from shielding other people. Like, if you could see the statistic for how much damage you're actually giving other people as a bonus, it'd probably be very similar to how much a Torvald typically has in a normal game. So I'd say get in a position where you can shield better and be of more assistance to your team rather than focusing on doing damage. So yeah, that's that for this game. Again, if you're a subscriber, then I'd be happy to go over your game as well. This will be uploaded to YouTube. All of them will be uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, subscribe now. Forehead.